All right, Bible readers, it is time for another quick Bible study, and it is coming from our reading in Ezekiel 41 through 44. And my title here is God is Precise. I believe that with all my heart. When you read the Bible a couple of times, you will start to see the precision with which God works. So let's look at some examples here. And in Ezekiel 41 verse 1, I'm just going to show you a fraction of the precision in terms of how the temple was put together. So it says, afterward, he brought me. So this is like the Spirit of God bringing Ezekiel to show him some things. And so this is what he means by afterward. He brought me to the temple and measured the posts 6 cubits broad on one side and 6 cubits broad on the other side, which was the breadth of the tabernacle. Now, most Christians, when they get to stuff like this, lists and genealogies and descriptions and, it seems kind of like a bunch of minutia to them. And they yawn and they go to sleep and they think, oh, this book's, 2,000 years old, or, however old the actual book is. And they just don't see the relevance. But I think every verse, every word has relevance. God is trying to tell us something if we will only hear. Okay. So if you read Ezekiel 41, the entire chapter, you'll see this precision measurement everywhere it goes in the temple. Everything has a measurement except one thing. I don't know if I want to get into that. It's a part of the temple that involves forgiveness, and it is the only thing that doesn't have a measurement. I'm sure that doesn't mean anything, right? Nah, God just messed up and left the measurement out. I wonder if his forgiveness is without measure. All right, let's move on. The priests are also held to a high standard of precision. So in Ezekiel 44, I'm going to read some things. And if you're looking at the notes, I've kind of broken down the verses. I haven't changed the words. I've just eliminated some to kind of bust this down into a list style approach to show the precision and the details that God works with his people. So Ezekiel 44:17, they shall be clothed with linen garments. Super specific. And no wool shall come upon them. They shall have linen bonnets and shall have linen breeches. They shall not gird themselves with anything that causeth sweat. Now we're down in 44:20. Neither shall they shave their heads. Oops. Nor suffer their locks to grow long. They shall not pull their, they shall only pull their heads. Neither shall any priest drink wine. Neither shall they take for their wives a widow. They shall take maidens of the seed of the house of Israel, or a widow that had a priest before. Ezekiel 44:23, and they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. Look, I don't know exactly why God had such specificity with these Levites. And I'm sure there's somebody that, much smarter than me in Jewish culture or whatever that could maybe explain some of this. But what I take away from this is God is precise. And when it comes down to it, these priests, one of their primary functions was to teach the people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause people to discern between the clean and the unclean. This was so that people wouldn't be in their sin, that they would have like self-awareness of what was sin and what wasn't sin. All right, so then there's something very interesting about the Levitical priesthood that I want to read to you. In Ezekiel 44:28, it says, I am their inheritance. So this is God saying, I am their inheritance, and ye shall give them no possession in Israel. Okay, so again, if you've never read the Old Testament, when the 12 tribes of Israel came to the promised land, all of the tribes were given land as part of their possession, except the tribe of Levi, because they were deemed to be the priests. And there's lots of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into that here, but they were the chosen tribe to be the priesthood. And so they weren't given a possession of the land itself. And God goes on, I am their possession. So this is the only tribe that he said this to. And I think in a lot of ways, it was a foreshadowing of what God was going to do at some point, because Let me just conclude with this question. Christian, what are you seeking as an inheritance? What do you think? What do you think your inheritance is as a child of God? Well, I know for me, what I have is I have God in me. So when Ezekiel 44:28 says, I am their inheritance, I am their possession, I possess God in this body that the Bible later refers to as the temple. Okay, so we're talking about the temple and this great specificity around everything that's involved with the temple. And then later on, the Apostle Paul explains to us that our body is the temple. Oh my, there's a lot to learn here in Ezekiel. Yeah, the book wasn't written to us, it was written for our learning, and there is much to learn. So when God said through Ezekiel to tell the Levite priests that God was their inheritance and their possession, how do you think that was received? I'm just curious, what do you think? Do you think the Levites were like, all right, we don't get any land, but we get God? Were they happy about it? Well, I think many of them were. I think they were a spiritual people, just in the sense that they were this, set aside tribe. And, from their youth, I'm sure they were raised to think about life and the world in a very specific way compared to all the other tribes, because they knew that they were sanctified and set aside. The Apostle Paul tells us, come out from among them and be separate. We as Christians are supposed to be separate. We are kind of a, what would you say it? An expression, a type of this Levitical priesthood, because we possess God. God is our inheritance as a child of God. And some people, some Christians seem to be somewhat ashamed of that. They'll never speak about their Christianity. They won't witness to anybody. And I think that's a shame. And I think that it really makes me wonder if they are a Christian. It's not for me to judge. Whether or not you're a Christian is between you and God. But if you say that Jesus Christ is the greatest thing ever, and your salvation is the greatest thing ever, but then you don't tell anybody about it, but then you'll go watch a movie and you'll turn right around and tell anybody that'll listen how great that movie was, you got to ask yourself, what kind of relationship do you have with the Lord? All right. So I guess that's the question I want to leave you with. If all you had was God as your inheritance, how does that sit with you? You going to be okay with that, or do you need something more? All right, that's all I got. I hope that this somehow encouraged you. I hope that you subscribe. And if you need to talk, let's do that. If you don't know if you know Jesus Christ is your personal Savior, I'd sure love to talk to you about that. It's easy to get saved. What's tough is to let go of your own pride and, the feeling like you're the master of your own domain. That's what's tough. It's tough to let go of yourself so that you can submit to the Lord. But once you do, life gets super interesting. All right. Thanks for being here.